these technologies. So today, our guests are already on the call. I think I've seen Dr. Mambo is on the call. Also, Engineer Grace, she's on the call. I've seen Felicity. I can also see Latiff on the call. I think we're waiting for Wachiye, who will be joining us shortly. Let's confirm that. So meanwhile, I want us to think about Industry 4.0. If you don't know about Industry 4.0 so far, but you just do a simple Google search, look at what does this entail, and so during this session, you can be able to engage the speakers. You can be able to ask them questions around Industry 4.0. Kenya is developing. It's a developing country, so we're still moving and making strides in terms of technology. And our speakers today will be able to tell us the different sectors they are involved in, what's the progress in terms of adoption of these different technologies, and what should we even expect in the next few coming years, because technology moves very fast, and we might be talking about Industry 4.0 today, and then in the next 1 year, we're talking about Industry 5.0. We never know. So how ready are we? Because of late, we're talking about intercommunication of devices. There's a hot topic around 5G in terms of how safe it is, how important it is, but here in the country, we are still adopting this technology slowly. So maybe our speakers will maybe even shine some light in terms of the different sectors. Why is the adoption of some of these technologies a bit slower compared to other sectors which are adopting some of these technologies very fast? And maybe even suggestions in terms of how can we as young engineers, students, chip in terms of ensuring that the adoption of some of these technologies is a bit quicker and efficient. Also, how can we even chip in terms of, in terms of coming up with solutions that go line in line with the current Industry 4.0, so that we can be able to see the actualization of such technologies very fast. So allow me then to introduce our moderator for the session. She's Christine Were Akech. She's a fifth-year biomedical engineering student here at Kenyatta University. And also she is the current vice chair for IEEE KU, Kenyatta University Student Branch, and the chair for IEEE Engineering in Medicine and Biology Society. So let's join hands then as we welcome the moderator, Christine Were.
Thank you so much, Alan, for that good invitation to this session. As he has said, my name is Christine Were, and today I'll be moderating this session, a panel discussion on are we ready for this Industry 4.0 technologies. As you can see on your screens, we have our panelists. We have Dr. Shadrack Mambo. He's the Dean, School of Engineering and Technology at Kenyatta University. We also have Felicity Mecha. She's a Developer Relations and Partnerships at Africa Stocking. We also have Mr. Latiff Cherono. Mr. Latiff is the Electronics Manufacturing Manager at Gearbox. In the room, we also have Mr. Martin Wachiye. He's a Ph.D. student at University of Oxford. And we also have Engineer Grace Onyango. She's the Director, Capacity Building and Accreditation at EBK, that is Engineers Board of Kenya. So I'll be taking you through this session, and as we begin this session, maybe I'll give a chance to all our panelists to introduce themselves officially, and as they introduce themselves, they'll also have a chance to tell us the basic understanding, how they understand this technology, the Industry 4.0 technology, and how better they can explain it to a 10-year-old. Because from the sessions we've heard about virtual reality, we've heard about IoT, but we want it to be explained in the simplest term possible. How can you explain to a 10-year-old? Maybe we shall start with our Dean School of Engineering, Dr. Shadrack Mambo. Dr. Mambo, can you hear me? Okay, as Dr. Mambo prepares to speak shortly, let's hear an official introduction from Mr. Martin Wachiye.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Sorry, I had problems with connecting.
Yes, we can hear you, Martin. Just go ahead.
Sorry, I had problems with connecting. I've just joined in a minute ago.
Okay, then, Mr. Latiff Cherono, you could introduce yourself officially and explain to us in the simplest possible terms what you understand by Industry 4.0 technologies.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be a part of this panel. So my name is Latiff Cherono. I'm a mechanical engineer by training, but a lot of my experience and career has been in electronics manufacturing. And I'm at Gearbox, setting up the electronics manufacturing line. That's actually making the PCBs for electronics. And my understanding of Industry 4.0 really is how the digital world and the physical world come together. So that is going to affect us not only in manufacturing, but really across all our lives. So if a child asks me, how do I explain that? Is just say, how do we connect the physical world to the digital world? And that is through Industry 4.0. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Madam Felicity Mecha. Okay, let's maybe hear from Engineer Grace Onyango.
I think Felicity was talking. Maybe she needs to unmute herself because I could see her. There we are. Okay.
Yes, sorry, I'd been talking to myself. Yes, so my name is Felicity Mecha. I'm an electrical engineer by training, currently working at Africa Stocking with the product offering for Internet of Things. As you know, Africa Stocking is mainly like software related, but recently we've introduced Internet of Things where software meets hardware. And personally, as an individual, I've interacted with the fourth industrial revolution technologies. One of them is artificial intelligence. I run a community called AI Saturdays, which was based on learning, community-based learning. I've been part of blockchain, a community called EOS Nairobi. I've also worked with Fab Labs in Nairobi and Gearbox, and we were involved in something called the Mecha project, which was focused at building machinery and equipment for the Nairobi National Hospital. So basically, the ones for the maternal and neonatal clinic, things like incubators and phototherapy machines. And yeah, so basically, I have a bit of an understanding of the fourth industrial revolution. And what I would say, the summary has been given by Latiff, but I'd say a fourth industrial revolution is more than the technology, and that's why we talk about a revolution. A revolution is not technology as a standalone entity. A revolution is the technology that we are transitioning into in collaboration with other factors, and some of the factors are economic, some are political, and some are social. And if all these things don't work together, then we don't transition. And the fourth industrial revolution is part of the industrial revolution in general, which is like people moving from hand tools to having mechanized tools. And that means that now We still have the tools, but we are also digitizing part of the process. We are taking some of the process online. We are taking our data online, and we are using technology to solve our problems and to do the things that human beings necessarily don't have to do, the things that cannot be specialized and don't need a human touch. And we are automating some of those things. And yeah, so the technologies are many. Just like I said, AI, robotics, Internet of Things, 3D printing, or additive manufacturing, whether it's quantum computing, big data, cybersecurity, all those encompass the technology aspect of the the fourth industrial revolution. And I think we'll keep elaborating. Personally, I would like to elaborate why I think this revolution is more than a technological wave. I think I'll give some time for the other people to speak. But thank you so much for allowing us to talk about this topic, because it's a very important topic.
Thank you so much for that good introduction. We'll now listen to Engineer Grace Onyango.
Hi, Christine, and thank you for inviting me to this important discussion. I love what the previous speakers have said. Personally, I'm an electrical engineer. I currently work with the Engineers Board of Kenya as the director in charge of capacity building and accreditation. The Engineers Board of Kenya is the regulator of the engineering sector. And we basically regulate the entire value chain of engineering, which is engineering education, the training when people get into industry, and the linkages between academia and industry, and finally the practice. And so I'll be open. I'll say I've not interacted in my line of work. I've not really interacted much, but when I was practicing, when I was doing consultancy services for the number of years I was in the consulting sector, I did see and interact with a bit of the fourth industrial revolution. But where I work, we see it coming, especially when we are accrediting engineering programs. There are new universities are bringing in new engineering programs for that they want to start and run in their universities. Mainly when I look at the mechanical and production engineering programs, when I look at mechanical and manufacturing engineering programs, when I look at some of the new engineering programs that are coming for accreditation, you can actually tell that the universities are designing the programs based on what is currently happening in industry and with the fourth industrial revolution. So what does that tell me? It tells me that even as we are in the fourth industrial revolution, it means that universities, academia, and industry must come together so that when engineering programs are being designed, then they're being designed in mind of giving graduates the skill set that is required to fit into the Industry 4.0 world. Because right now, if you do not have analytical skills, where will you fit in? If you do not have problem solving skills, critical thinking skills, that sort of thing, where will you fit in Industry 4.0? So how would I explain it to a 4-year-old? I think a 10-year-old, sorry, I have a 4-year-old. I think that's why I'm thinking of 4-year-olds. How will I explain it to a 10-year-old child? Even my 4-year-old child, she knows about smartphones and the way things work. So I'd basically tell a 10-year-old is making everything smart. Basically connecting. I like Latiff's description of how he would explain it to a 10-year-old. But basically, I'd tell a 10-year-old in the world of today, it's making everything smart. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you so much, Engineer Grace, for that introduction. We'll now move to Mr. Martin.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me in this panel. I'm so excited to be among very experienced and senior members of our technology society. My name, as you can see, is Martin Wachiye. Wafula is my surname, and I'm currently reading a PhD in engineering science at University of Oxford. My specific interest is in an area of graphs, which is very related to what we are talking about today, because if you look at one of the key elements of Industry 4.0 is is the Internet of Things. And in the Internet of Things, you can describe the sensors as nodes, and then the connection between these sensors as links in a network. So my work is looking forward to improving the efficiency in analysis of in analytics of this data, of this graphical data, and also in trying to just make it more efficient in terms of discovery of topology. Let's say you want to know how your IoT network looks, or you want to know the topology of your IoT networks. There's a lot of overhead, so I'm interested in studying compression mechanisms that will reduce the overhead required in that process. Now, Industry 4.0, and I'm so happy that my colleagues have explained it in totality, because there's a technology aspect, and as Felicity has said, there's more to it because it's a revolution. And it comes to other descriptions like what is the gap between the rich and the poor when we come to this technological revolution? Are we still going to see more billionaires in the tech industry? How is this gap going to be narrowed so that we have like wealth distribution in the population? So there's the process of creation of that wealth, which is more from innovators, entrepreneurs, and then the process of distribution to the entire population. So Industry 4.0, or the fourth industrial revolution, just brings together the physical, the biological, and the digital world. So it's seamless. If it's in a company or a processing plant, we know previously people have automated, maybe they just have an automatic packing machine, they have an automatic scanner, but now the entire value chain is going to be automated. And this is going to have a very big ripple effect to the way organizations do things. So you start automating the value chain from if it's an agricultural farm, let's say from the farm until you have the whole supply chain to the final product. So that's what the internet, the Industry 4.0 aims to achieve. What would you tell? How would you tell it to a 10-year-old? A 10-year-old kid is probably quite interested in computer games. They're interested in watching movies about robots. So when you try to tell them that automation includes like having robotics in the manufacturing process, robotics in carrying out, robots carrying out medical care of patients or surgeries, or being able to play games more seamlessly with the other 10-year-olds in other places in the world. So Industry 4.0 to me is an automation of the entire value chain. I look forward to having this conversation with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Martin. Maybe I'll move to Dr. Shadrack Mambo. Dr. Mambo, are you with us? I think he's yet to join. And those were very wonderful introductory remarks from our panelists. And even me, where I'm seated, I can now understand it better, how I would explain to my small sister or brother. Because if not with these simple words, maybe I could have used bigger words which they literally don't understand. And considering the fact that all of us here are Kenyan citizens, most of us have spent some time here in Kenya, maybe I want us to talk about the role that this technology is doing in Kenya right now, and that is both in academia, manufacturing, research, communication, in our area of expertise. How far have we employed these technologies? And that will start with Engineer Grace.
I think this is again my own personal opinion. I thought for a very long time that we were way behind the rest of the world, until I think it was last week or the week before, we were invited to Isuzu, the car manufacturer. And we were invited as a board to go and tour the facility, and I think what I saw there was marvelous. I may not be like Martin and Latiff and Felicity, who have the language for Industry 4.0. But from what Martin has said is it's more than just the technology itself, it's the revolution. And so what I saw there was a highly automated plant, but still with a bit of a human interface. There were quite a few people there, and that is just Isuzu. However, as Kenya, I don't know whether the conversation should be, are we there yet? Or being the kind of economy that we are, if we go Industry 4.0 and highly automate and make everything smart, what then happens to the number of people who work in the manufacturing sector, especially if you look at industrial area and the number of people who go there? And because I see the number of people who walk to industrial area, my simple thinking is that maybe we aren't there as much as we think we are. But when I listened to Felicity's introduction and some of the things that she's doing, it means that maybe we are there, but it's just not. People are just not talking about it as much as they are supposed to be talking about it. And if it is there, maybe it is locked in a certain section of people who are able to see exactly what they are doing. However, if we look at some of the startups that are coming up, again, we could say that maybe we are heading to that direction. But as a country, I don't think we are there yet. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you so much for that response. Maybe Mr. Martin should add on to that in the area of telecommunications. Have we started using these technologies in telecom?
I think Kenya is quite a pace setter in the entire continent of Africa and even in the world. We try to move with times, or we try to adopt quickly to technology with other countries in Africa like South Africa, Egypt, Nigeria, and the rest of the world. We have been making good or tremendous progress, because when you talk about telecommunication, which is an area of where I worked on in undergraduate, you look at the internet accessibility in Kenya, and you see Kenya is one of the countries that has done so well in terms of fiber optics connectivity to nearly all the 47 counties. Recently, you've all seen there was the launch of trials for 5G in Kenya by Safaricom, and 5G is a very big driver of the Industry 4.0 revolution. Because when you talk about Internet of Things, for example, they need a lot of bandwidth. So you need an enhanced mobile broadband. You need a very massive machine type communication to allow machines and machines to communicate. You really need a lot of a very small latency if you want to carry out surgery. Let's say a doctor in Kenyatta Hospital is carrying out a surgery in Moi Referral Hospital. This doctor is operating the surgical robot remotely. So we want a delay close to zero milliseconds or 0 microseconds. So 5G is a very key enabler of this technology. Safaricom is setting pace. We've seen they've started the trials, and I think in as much as we are going in slowly, which is expected, and I think Africa and Europe always go at the same pace because we are in kind of a same region in telecom. But we've been doing a lot of stuff. There are a lot of incubation hubs in Nairobi that are working a lot on this technology. We have groups like AI Kenya. We have groups like IoT Kenya, which is situated in Strathmore. We have guys who are working on hardware implementations, like I think Gearbox are doing a lot of work on hardware. So all these systems, the small aspects that each group is doing, at the end will interlink and form an entire process. But we've done so well. Kansas City is a very good example. The data center was set up and launched recently. That's a very big, very important drive of Industry 4.0, because when you talk about Industry 4.0, quickly it comes in your mind. You need cloud computing needs a lot of data center capability. So we have seen a lot of interest, guys like Amazon coming in, Microsoft trying to come into Kenya, because then we have the required infrastructure for setting up these necessities for Industry 4.0. Just lastly, I know there's already companies who have implemented Internet of Things. EABL is a good example. I'm sure Liquid Telecom is offering it as an enterprise service with the low-powered Internet of Things network. So Kenya is on the track. Worries about jobs is a big thing because of the automation. But then we have to move with the world, because if we are left behind, we are probably going to suffer more losses than if we move with everyone. So when you automate, so many jobs are going to be lost, but thousands and thousands of new jobs are going to be created. As an organization, what someone should do is ensure that there's continuous upskilling of their employees. In universities, we must change the way we teach so that we can be able to move and drive this revolution together with the world. Thank you.
Nice one. That was very good and very clear in the telecommunication area. We can see that various companies in Kenya are now adopting this technology. And maybe Mr. Latiff should also tell us, how about in the manufacturing area? Are we using these technologies in Kenya?
Thank you for that question. So I've had the pleasure to do a lot of manufacturing consulting, not only in Kenya, in the United States and South Africa. So I can actually compare where we are in Kenya compared to these three other countries. And Kenya's manufacturing is actually in Industry 3.0, which is adding PLCs and automation. So we're not at the point of implementing Industry 4.0. If we look at the leaders in manufacturing who are starting to look into Industry 4.0, and Martin mentioned EABL, it is at the point of collecting data, just at the beginning part, collecting the data and then beginning to understand what can we do with that data. So from a manufacturing standpoint, we are somewhat behind the curve. However, the flip side of that coin is there is a huge opportunity here, right? So what Industry 4.0 is going to do for Kenya, it's actually going to help us leapfrog in the economies that we're working on, right? So I mean, if you let's take some things into context. Kenya is essentially 100 years old, right? The Kenyan colony started in 1920, and here we are in 2021. So in 100 years, we have gone from nothing to starting into Industry 4.0. That means that the time that we spent in each of those industries is much shorter than other countries have had, right? So if you look at the UK spent a long time in Industry 2.0, the steam innovation, and in Industry 3.0. So we are compressing the time it takes to spend in these industries. So the opportunity for us is to look at what can we use in Industry 4.0 to help us jump or leapfrog. So from a manufacturing standpoint, it's saying, how can we leverage Industry 4.0 to make us become more efficient in the productivity that we need, right? So that's how we're going to do that. The other thing I think where manufacturing is assessing Industry 4.0 is trying to assess it from our point of view. How can we create or use Industry 4.0 technologies and methodologies to give us the best fit solution? And as a country, we have to look at Industry 4.0 from our own lens, not look at it from the European lens or the Asian lens. It has to be from our lens. How can we use this to solve the problems that we have to create best fit solutions for our continent?
Thank you so much. And maybe I'll go to Madam Felicity. While Martin was responding, he mentioned about IoT and some companies that have already adopted this technology. And I understand that you have vast experience in this area. Could you please expound on the same and tell us more companies that are using and other functions that you're using IoT currently in Kenya to solve?
Yeah. So I don't know, because the original question had been the role it plays. So I was mentally prepared to give you all my experiential knowledge, not just what I'm currently working on, but what I've worked on in my journey. So maybe I could just answer it from that perspective, from what I know, from the different things I've worked on, because like my experience is not 100% just Internet of Things. But I'll definitely give context on Internet of Things. So because some of the fourth industrial revolution technologies I've doubled with, just like I mentioned, is there's additive manufacturing, aka 3D printing, there's artificial intelligence, there's Internet of Things, there's blockchain and robotics. Those are some of the things I've doubled with, and some of them I'm still working on them. But currently, I'm working on Internet of Things. So I'll give you a general perspective of some of the things I've seen. So increase in productivity is one of them. That applies not only in Internet of Things, but still in data-driven kind of settings, where people are now bringing in data to help them understand how their inputs and outputs interrelate. And this is building a lot of efficiency, not only in production and manufacturing, and it's also building efficiency in terms of business. So I'll tell you, like the company I'm working with, which is Africa's Talking right now, we are very big on analytics and being data driven. Anything that we do, we try to understand, to analyze it afterwards, understand how some of the inputs we put and how they relate with the outputs, the expected outputs versus what is out there. So it's affecting both productivity in terms of manufacturing and productivity in terms of business analytics. There's also a growth in global trade, and some of that is mainly enhanced by things like e-commerce systems. And we are seeing a growth of e-commerce systems, especially right now during COVID. And some of those people that had to have physical shops are closing up and looking at digital systems. And they're looking for different ways to distribute their goods. And a lot of these things are even IoT driven. I'd give you an example. One of the companies that is incubated in our company is called Beba Begi, and what they're doing is kind of enhancing a safer distribution system for people in e-commerce. So you understand that when you order something online, sometimes they keep telling you go and pick it up at a certain shop, or go and pick it up at a certain point, or decide where you pick it up. And some people who are small scale e-commerce, like they're selling on Facebook or Instagram, they don't have a place to drop their things before somebody picks them up. So they've come up with smart lockers where somebody can book a locker, and then if somebody needs to drop, it's almost like a poster system, like what poster does. You can drop it within the locker. They'll be given like a sort of PIN number linked to their mobile phone, and they'll come and pick it at a time of their choosing. And the lockers have like specific locations in different regions. And those are some of the interesting solutions that are happening. Another thing I want to also emphasize on, this industrial revolution is looking at improving the quality of life of people, because the old industrial revolutions tended to turn people into machines. And to elaborate on that is that people were made to kind of focus on one task or focus on a single specialization. And now learning and even implementing of your knowledge, and knowledge is open everywhere. So that means that if you're overly boxed into one aspect and not understanding how things interrelate and interoperate, that kind of doesn't give you an edge in the fourth industrial revolution. It means that people are no longer having to work jobs of the kind of your work is just to bolt one screwdriver all day, because that some of those industrial revolution previously would just put somebody in that kind of silo. even the newer industrial revolutions tended to kind of force people into a certain section or segment of the production of a single kind of line. And I'd elaborate on that. Look at the curriculum we have in engineering. The curriculum we have in engineering is telling us, focus on technical, focus on just, how machines operate and all that. What about user centricity? Things like user centricity, why am I building this? Who am I building this for? And all those things. Those things are, I can tell you, I had to come and learn them outside. So it means that your quality of life will improve when you don't have to do very boring tasks, when you can be a human being, and a human being only exists well when they have a broad mindset and they're not boxed into, and they're not being forced into one box and it's like, this is all you can think about, this is all you can do. The last one I'd say is kind of distribution of power, giving the power, delegating the power on a digital scale. And I'd say about distributed systems like blockchain, they allow people to have more control, and also things like additive manufacturing also give that kind of control, whereby you can customize some of the designs and some of the things you produce, and you can customize. You have the ability to have a production sort of a mini scale production system inside of your house in terms of 3D printing. Anyone can own a 3D printer. They're very cheap these days. And of course, within blockchain, you're being allowed to have to not have a totally centralized system, and that is also allowing for political systems to kind of think of decentralizing, resources and power, or distributing control to the people using such digital systems. So just to summarize, to give a few.
Thank you so much, Madam Felicity, for that. And I can agree with all our panelists that right now in Kenya, we are actually using these technologies. Like currently in the room where I'm seated, I have 3D printers around me, and even in my current project, I'm using IoT. So I agree that we are currently in Kenya, we are using these technologies, and it's just a matter of time as we continue advancing. And Engineer Felicity, Madam Felicity mentioned something to do with curriculum, and that triggers my next question to Mr. Martin. What gaps do you see between the industry and academia as of today in matters pertaining adoption of these technologies?
Thank you for that question. Now, every time you go to conferences or you meet people or you go out there networking, you always hear the story of half-baked graduate, half-baked engineers, half-baked everything. And it's always makes me a bit sad when the industry blames the academy and the academy also blames the industry. Yet the two should be working together to provide to produce the type of graduates that that they want. For a very long time, there's been a gap. This is not a Kenya problem only. It's an international problem. There's been a gap between industry and academia, which most institutions are trying to bridge by collaborating with industry. You'd find in universities, for example, if you're going to do a research project or you're going to do a master's in some of these future technologies, one would have like a university supervisor and an industrial supervisor. So if it's a problem that is related to a specific industry and you're working with that industry, so those are some of the ways we can bridge the gap between the industry and academia. We need to see more interest of the industry, especially in Kenya, in what is happening in our universities or in what is happening in the technical training institution. Because if something is really a big need in the industry, sometimes they can be able they should be part of curriculum development in universities and colleges. Then we should also have universities, because when you look at universities, they are more futuristic. The research is for the future. So some of this research needs to be transformed into application, need to be transformed into impact in the society. So this can only be done because industries, most of them have the capacity to implement some of these solutions that that we are coming up with. There's something that has really been bothering my mind for quite some time, especially since I came to the UK. I think also one of my professors in undergrad is called Professor Jalango, used to tell us that the most important resource after the human capital is time. Time is very important. So I'm trying now to understand why my engineering degree was 5 years, yet an engineering degree in Oxford or an engineering degree in Imperial College London is 3 years, and if you do 4 years, you get a master's of engineering. So we need to also rethink, because that's how we lose time. If you start school at 19 year old, you're probably going to work up to 24 years when someone else is going to work up to 23 years. And we need to look at our syllabus and see what are we doing that is quite different. We must first of all make sure the syllabuses reflect the needs of our society, the Kenyan society in particular. We must also make sure, in as much as learning the concepts, the foundation concepts are very important, also putting in aspects of the future and other aspects like management or the human factor in our degrees is very important. So, and I'm so happy we are here with engineer Grace, who is in the Engineers Board of Kenya. This is something that should now start coming up in the discussions, because I think 5 years is a very long time, and that's why we are seeing like repetition of courses in terms of units. Units are broken into very small courses, or you have like same courses taught in so many different units, when we could save on time and have graduates go out and start practicing. Industrial placements should be a very important thing to link the industry and academia. So in terms of internships, industries should be willing to give to offer internships to students. During my undergraduate time, the most important element of my school was when I went out for industrial internships. At some point, I did motor rewinding, which is a very a skill probably I'm not using right now, but then it made me understand electrical machines at some when I went back to school. So industrial placements, industries must have a given number of slots for university students to come and learn on the job, to come and get some of these skills, because most of those skills also you can't teach everything in universities, because you have the foundations to teach. I teach you electromagnetics, the Maxwell's equations in the university. When you go out there, you need that thinking, but you still also just need to know how to install transmission lines or how to carry out those processes. So there's need to bridge this gap. We need the stakeholders, especially the regulators. Engineers Board of Kenya will play a very key role in this. Universities and industry must develop these partnerships and objective partnerships, not just signing MOUs, because we also have a culture of signing MOUs, taking photos, posting on the website, and that's it. We don't see results from most of these MOUs. We must see like action being taken. And actions will be taken also if we also reduce the amount of corruption in our institutions. So as Felicity said, Industry 4.0 is technology, but there's also these other factors that come into play that are very important for driving this process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Martin, for that very elaborate answer. And I understand that Dr. Mambo has joined us. Dr. Mambo, are you here with us?
Yes, I am, Christine. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. Maybe you can introduce yourself, then we'll keep going.
Okay. Once again, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Mambo. I'm the Dean School of Engineering and Technology at Kenyatta University. And by profession, I'm an electronics engineer. I've been in the practicing industry for about 15 years and then in academia for the last 16 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Mambo, just before you joined us, before you spoke, Martin was answering a question on the gaps that are existing between academia and industry in matters pertaining adoption of these fourth industrial revolution technologies. And some of these gaps that he mentioned are the amount of time we take in our undergraduate courses, 5 years, compared to other universities in UK and US. And he also mentioned something on industrial placement, internship. What's your opinion on the same? What are some of the gaps that you have identified in this area between industry and academia?
Thank you, Christine. There are quite a number of gaps that really exist, and some of them either it's because there is no proper communication between the needs of the industry so that it's translated in the formulation of the curricula that we develop and we give to the students. I mean, in a Dean's Council, Deans of Engineering Council for all the universities offering engineering degree courses, we are doing something about it. In fact, we've met twice now so that we can have a stakeholders meeting where we want to revise the curricula. It should be more practical oriented, student based, and towards the needs of the industry. Some of the areas that we know we need to revise on is the practical part. The students go for industrial attachment. We are saying they go for industrial attachment at third and fourth year, and these days because of the pressure and the lack of time, the recommended period is 12 weeks, but you find they do either 8 weeks or 10 weeks, because again, also even for the students to find places for attachment, it's not that easy. Whereas we feel that an engineering student should go for a 1 year intense training, hands-on in the industry, so that by the time he graduates, he doesn't need to be retooled again. He doesn't need to be told what to do in the place he will have found a job. And usually some of the places that they will be going for industrial attachment, they would be the same places they would get employed from. The other thing is that we don't have enough resources to give practical experience even at the university level to the students. For example, some of the licenses we use for software that we use, when they expire, we find it hard to renew them, or they take some time before they are renewed, just because finances, the universities these days, they have a shortage of finance. The other part is that we should be introducing research at the graduate level. But again, because of lack of funds, we don't have enough money to introduce students into research so that they can come up. Our students are very good. You've seen the examples and the likes of Fidel, Alan, and you, Christine. You've come up with so many innovations, but we have to look for funding from elsewhere, because within the university, we don't have enough money to convert your innovations into incubatable products or final products. So these are some of the gaps that we need to close in with the industry and between the industry and the university. When I talk about, when we go into the fourth industrial revolution, we already practicing it. We are in the industry 4.0. Some of the designs that you guys have done, you have applied machine learning, you have done coding, you have done artificial intelligence to modify and perfect the kind of designs that you're coming up with so that they become even easier to produce. And when they're easier to produce, it means the labor that goes into it is less, meaning the final product will be affordable in the market. It will be cheaper than the previous model. So there are so many areas that we need to think about, and maybe as a group during a stakeholders meeting, so that we can come up with a refined curricula that is tailor-made to fit the needs of the industry. Some of the theories that we take our students through to might not be necessary. It's very good to ground somebody on the theories of any course that that he wants to take, so that he understands things from the past principles. But it should not take the kind of time that we have allocated. We need to put more emphasis on practical work, hands-on, so that even the student who comes out, the graduate who comes out, does not necessarily have to go looking for a job. He can be a job creator himself. Yeah, so that is my take, Christine and members. I don't know whether it makes sense or not. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Mambo. Your contribution makes a lot of sense in this discussion. Thank you so much. And as we talk about these technologies, we have now mentioned various areas where we are using them in Kenya. But if you compared Kenya and other countries like the US, the UK, South Africa, the level of adoption in Kenya is still very low. Maybe you can mention what are these factors that are contributing to this slow in adoption of these technologies. Madam Felicity, you can respond to this first.
Thank you. So I think that's a very important question because having been in this space, I can see how slow it's been. For example, the first sort of Fab Lab was then set up in like 2010. It's been around 10 years, and other universities have not opened their own prototyping labs. There's very few who have adopted. As in the amount of growth that needs to happen and the amount of speed we need to be able to create a revolution out of this technology is not in place. So one of the things that I think is blocking us, just like I said, we need it to move faster and make it sort of a revolution, is that we need to have people playing together. So we are saying the people in technology, the people in education, the people in politics, the policy makers, all need to be able to be working together for this to be a revolution, just like we said. Two, we need leadership. We need people whose main focus and main hunger is just to see that this revolution moves around, and not only just people who are leaders in this space, who are the leaders who are like sort of the catalysts of adoption. And they could be like self-appointed, they could be government appointed, but we need leaders, and we need a succession plan for these leaders. We need these leaders to hand the baton over to people. So if I understand this technology and I've been in this space for a while, I need to mentor someone who maybe is in university, or even the younger ones into STEM education, and really educate them on the things that will help them not only technologically, but economically, sociologically, and politically. Another thing that I think is also, there are policies that are also making it hard for adoption to kind of take place. Some of them are illustrated that recently we've been building some hardware to be able to do some sort of user education in our ecosystem on Internet of Things. And as we were integrating through the versions of that hardware, we realized that the prices of chips were growing, they were being expensive, and then the policies around importing electronic components are still not favorable. So it makes our cost of production super high. So it means that most people would say, like, I'd rather go make something in China and then import the whole product, because then it will be more cost effective. So the governments need to be very, very intentional about allowing people to, reducing the tax levies, reducing the friction around even running sort of businesses or running innovation around this space. Then there's also scaling up awareness. There's a bit of a sort of awareness gap. I'd say like some of the things people don't understand. Internet of Things in this forum and an engineering forum, people understand. When we go out there, sort of maybe advocating or educating people, they're like, oh, wait, just start from telling us what Internet of Things is. And much as you say South Africa is more educated, just the other day we were talking to people from South Africa, and they're supposed to be STEM educators, and they're like, we'd rather start from introducing, Internet of Things as a concept. Then I realized they are basically telling us that you need to break this down for us. So it's not, we can't really assume that the people who sort of, place themselves as though they're technologically forward, that it's sort of a mass movement. It's sort of, I'd say it's sort of a silo knowledge that has not been distributed to the masses. And if you want to know whether it has been distributed to the masses, find out whether your grandmother knows how to use a smartphone. If your grandmother cannot use a smartphone, we are not there yet. So that's the kind of revolution we need to have in terms of awareness. Then, of course, there's infrastructure, from things like Internet of Things, AI, whatever. They're all dependent on things like internet or some sort of connectivity online. And I tell you for sure that some of the things we implement become challenged in terms of infrastructure, especially outside of the urban centers, like whether it's Nairobi, Mombasa, Nakuru, and even some of the secondary urban areas like maybe Kisumu may not be 100% having stable connectivity. So there needs to be sort of groundwork done in terms of infrastructure. Yeah, those are some of the things that I've observed. There's a lot more, but I don't want to talk as though I'm the only panelist here.
Thank you so much. Mr. Latiff, Madam Felicity has mentioned something about chips being very expensive, and I understand you are in the area of hardware manufacturing. Maybe you could mention what other stumbling blocks are we experiencing or outside there that are prohibiting adoption of this technology?
Great, thank you for that question. So I'm not sure if you may not know this, but Kenya, and I like to say this, Kenya by happenstance is actually the leader in hardware development in the region. And why I say by happenstance, it's a leader without any government strategy or direction or input from the government, right? So currently there are about, and this number has actually tripled in the last 5 years, close to 70 companies developing IoT hardware in Kenya. And Africa Talking is one of those companies, right? Now, all these companies go through, when they're designing their products in Kenya to meet Kenyan problems, providing solutions for Kenyans. But they don't have the capacity to manufacture them. So they send their designs either to Eastern Europe or to China to get them manufactured. And then that takes time to get those products back to Kenya. There's a lead time in clearing those products through customs, right? So you're already right there is a problem. Now, when you look at setting up electronics manufacturing as we are here, it is the processes or the current regulations around electronics and that value chain is really not set up for that. So we're in discussions with the Ministry of Industrialization, Ministry of ICT, to try to streamline and understand from a value standpoint what is required to make Kenya a competitive option when it comes to electronics manufacturing. So this is a conversation that will take several years to happen. But as we wait for that conversation to happen, we're already putting in place the supply chain to meet there. So we understand that trying to beat China on price is going to be extremely difficult. But what we can beat China on is on time, so reducing that product development time. What we can beat China on is providing best fit solutions to our problems because they're designed by Kenyan engineers, such as the team of Felicity, Martin and the rest, Fidel, etc. So that's where we can add value. And where we need the government is to be able to look and say, we can help you break these challenges by putting in measures that allow us to see that we're creating a brand new sector. And believe me, this is going to be a sector that can really explode if the right incentives and the right policies are put in place. But we have to look at it from the point of view of creating value. We cannot look at it from the point of view of just importing electronic products, because at that point, all we are is a consumer or a trader. And when it comes to electronics, the person who owns the value in electronics is the person who designs that IP and then distributes that IP into the market. The person who just manufactures only contains a small part, right? So we want to be able to contain that entire value of electronics. So actually, the better term to call here is advanced digital production. Those technologies, the entire value chain needs to be held by us on this continent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Latiff, for that answer. Now I would like us to talk about the impacts of these technologies in the labor market. And this question I'd like to pose to Dr. Mambo. Do you think that the current workers are ready for these technologies? Do they have the skill set?
Thank you, Christine. To answer your question, first of all, is to maybe identify which engineering sector we could be talking about, because it's either the manufacturing, the management, the distribution, the sales, the maintenance, and all that. If you go to the design sector, you realize that these skills will be required and highly required. But when you go to areas of maintenance, areas of sales and maintenance and services, then they might not require some of these skill sets. However, it's very important that all of them understand, because right from the point of installation to the point of having the unit work, you need to know what could go wrong and how to troubleshoot, identify, and then be able to solve that problem. So giving the professionals the skill sets that will make them better users for the Industrial Revolution, it's something that we should actually try to enhance. The current crop of engineers are quite savvy on that, but the likes of us who went to school some 30 years ago, if you don't take time to learn some of these languages, programming languages, and improve on the required skill set, then you have some challenges when working. For us in the academia, it's a little bit better, because we are being challenged to give the correct, what is actually the right thing to our students. So you don't have much choice but to learn. But for those in the industry, you realize it's quite a challenge. That is my take.
Thank you so much. And maybe a follow-up on the same, but to Madam Felicity. Considering the Dr. Mambo here as the Dean School of Engineering, he's really working hard to provide the environment for most of us to learn these new technologies, artificial intelligence, IoT. But then in the market, automation is also ongoing. Most activities are being automated. At the moment when you graduate and we now look for jobs, you want jobs, are we going to have spaces for us, or robots will have taken over everything, even whatever things we know we will not have the ability to apply them outside there?
Thank you for asking me that. Actually, I was it was brewing in my head. There's this mystery or myth that people are trying to create, that robots are going to take over our jobs, AI is going to take over, the human aspects and all that. And really, I would like to really elaborate that, first of all, there is no amount of automation that is going to make humans redundant. Just like we can see, like, whether we are trying to build self-driving cars, there's still a need for a human in that space, just for safety purposes. For example, even if you create a robot that does surgery, are you going to trust a robot to do surgery on your loved one? You would want a human in that space, kind of ensuring if there's an error, they can, stop the process very fast and all that. So I don't think our jobs are going to become redundant. And for that, it's like, especially in terms of getting people aware of this, it's important for them to understand how jobs are now evolving, like what's more relevant in the industry. And I can tell you for sure, things have changed on the ground. Right now, it's not really about how much you can memorize, because information is online. It's not about how much you've memorized and how much you can, memorize and regurgitate. In the era when the information was not online and you couldn't Google something on the spot, people would ask you questions to find out how your memory works. But right now, it's like, even doctors, when you go to the doctors, you've already Googled your results and you have like a short list of things you think you can have, and it's for him to just really kind of confirm and do a lab test. So we definitely have to get to that place of saying, like, where now do we lie, especially when we are coming from a curriculum that is all about how much I can memorize and regurgitate on paper, and you come out here and realize it's really all about things like collaboration. In the labor field right now, you need to be able to work with people. You need to be able to collaborate with people, and that should be really enhanced even from an educational aspect. Is like how much more do you enhance collaboration in terms of whatever projects people are building and whatever things that people are doing. And then there's also enhancing also your soft skills, like communicating. Can you communicate whatever you're building? Can you communicate value? It's like, whatever I'm building, can I build it and finish and communicate value to either a customer, a client, a user, or anything else? There's a very, very, very big gap on that area, where, especially for engineers, you become like that person who you're pouring over your technical stuff, such that if somebody even asks you what that is, you can't even explain to them. You should be able to switch languages contextually to who you're speaking with. Where now I'm an engineer, I'm with engineers, I can tell them all this technical stuff. But when I'm talking to someone who's not an engineer, how do I explain engineering concepts to them? How do I break it down? There's usually that sort of in between. And then there's also, I also wanted to mention something about on even the opportunity that fourth industrial revolution has given us, and being able to do things like working online. There's a lot of working online going on, and being able to work for people who are not even in Kenya. You're working for people in Silicon Valley. You're doing that sort of digital collaborations, working with different time zones. If you're able to even build that kind of Hello, can you hear me? Oh, I think I dropped off for a second. If you're able to build that collaborative experience in learning from even an early stage, then when you come to the industry, you become more of an asset to the people who employ you, because then you're not, our education system has taught us, like, you need to know everything, but there's nobody who knows everything. You need to be able to understand, what do I know and how can I collaborate with someone else. The last one I'd say is being a sort of having an entrepreneurial mindset. So that means that even though you're a technical person, understanding how your technology affects the sort of, what do we call it, like the value chain of whatever you're building. Having that mindset, even within employment, is going to be valuable to an employer, because even as you're building, you're thinking about cost effectiveness. You're thinking about things like, how users interact with this. So there has to be that problem solving, critical thinking, a sort of mindset that is able to see how everything interconnects, despite the fact that I'm specializing in a certain area, kind of mindset for you to stand out. Otherwise, you'll just be one of the people in the employment industry.
Thank you, Madam Felicity. And to Mr. Latiff, what's your opinion on the same? Do you think automation is going to make the human capital redundant in some sort of way?
I don't believe so. That is not my my feeling at all. I actually believe that as we're progressing on this age of changing technologies, we as humans adapt, right? And as we went through this question has been asked on every transition from each of the industrial ages, right? When you went from the first industrial age of using tools into steam, that question was there. People's jobs are going to be taken away. When you went from the second industry 2.0 to 2.3.0, that also came. When robots were introduced into factories, that also came. So the question is not what's going to happen to us. The question is, yes, we will adapt, right? So from the human standpoint, how to adapt is the most important question, right? We need to have a continual learning mindset, as Felicity mentioned, right? So for example, one of the questions that you asked, what is the gap from academia in meeting the goals of Industry 4.0? So if I was a student in Kenya right now, and I understand that there's a gap between my theory and my practical, I would do everything that I can to try to learn how to build things. So if you're an electrical engineer, learn how to build IoT devices. You can go and invest in an Arduino board and start building something. That experience of building is going to come very handy when you start looking for a job. Not only does it show you that you have the experience, but you can actually leverage that time on that hours that you've spent in building into creating a solution which you can take into the market and start trying to create something for yourself, right? So I'm not too concerned about automation and that question about not having jobs, because as humans, our greatest asset is the ability to be creative, the ability to think broadly, the ability to create different avenues. So even though we're becoming more efficient in having AI and machinery, it allows us to create other avenues of opportunity. So we should be looking at Industry 4.0 not as a blocker to jobs, but as a enabler for jobs. Okay, that's how we need to be looking at it. And these jobs are highly skilled jobs, which have a very huge multiply effect when we're looking at the amount of jobs that can be created from the sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I also agree with you. Most students here should not be afraid of the same date. That's normally a question that arises every time. Most of us normally wonder during our conversations, our normal conversations, if waiters in hotels are going to be replaced by robots and other jobs. Yeah. But I think with that response, we are all comfortable and we should all just advance our skills, because as technology advances, new opportunities also come up. So that was good. And in today's session, most of the sessions from yesterday and today, we had various workshops and presentation on data and the importance of data in realization of these technologies. Mr. Martin, how is data aiding in realization of these fourth industrial revolution technologies, especially in the telecommunication industry? How are we using data?
Thank you for that question. I just quickly want to add on. I would do a lot of injustice if I didn't say this, because it just came into my mind about the future of work. And then I'll in 1 minute tell you my response to data and 5G. So just quickly, I think responses on future of work have been fantastic, and there's some reports that I was reading while preparing for this session. If you look at this future of skills that are needed, you'll realize that more are human skills even than the tech skills. So we are still going to be relevant at any point. And as all the panelists have said, we cannot be replaced. But that should not give you a lot of laxity, because you as an individual can be replaced by tech. What does that mean? So as we are trying to see these new technologies coming up, everybody in this panel is telling you upskill, learn new skills, learn how to create things. So what happens if you don't learn? machines will take over some of the roles. In fact, very many roles that we are seeing today. Look at autonomous vehicles. Very soon we'll have driverless taxis all over our streets, and which are very advantageous because then we'll see less traffic in cities. So what should a taxi driver be doing right now? What should they be prepared? How should they be preparing for this disruption? Because it's there, it's coming. I've seen those driverless cars being tested on the highways. So we must be aware that it's not going to replace humans, but you as an individual can be replaced in terms of these skills. I'll just share a link here by a report from Workforce that people can just go and read in their time. It's written by PwC. And there's worry at some point we'll get to the future. The future will have what you call it will have autonomous intelligence. So there's a lot of autonomous stuff. So soft skills are going to be very important in people. So try to look at that report and just analyze. It's the same thing that McKinsey has done recently and World Economic Forum. So it can give you insights on how to prepare for the future. Now, coming on to data, data is very, very important right now. Some people have called it the modern day oil. Others have called it gold. So many ways to refer to it. We are in a very data intensive world. And just a good example that we've all been using here, the Internet of Things. You can imagine the billions of sensors that will be out here collecting this data. Collecting the data, just data without insights from that data is not useful. So we need to get insights from the data. And if you look at some of the reports, one of which I've sent to you, you realize that we'll have autonomous systems taking over decision making. Because you study the data, you analyze that data. These are machine learning processes or data analytics systems or AI systems. Then be able to make decisions, be able to make more accurate decisions than what humans could do, because we are limited sometimes at capacity in terms of, you can't look at, let's say, 10 million lines, but then an AI system can analyze this data. So we are going into a very data intensive world. It's going to be very critical in decision making, controlling traffic, deciding where to set up water boreholes in Nairobi. It's going to be done by these systems. Looking at the infections, like COVID-19 has been, a lot of analysis has been done on spread of infection. Models have come out. People have looked at these in terms of graphs and see where are we likely to have the next spread. Are we going to have another explosion of infection? So insights are going to be developed from this data. And that's why data is very, it's becoming a crucial resource. Companies are trying to mine a lot of data, look at social media and their ads and marketing. They're all capitalizing on this data. So data will drive decisions. There are issues that are arising because of that. Issues on privacy and data protection is becoming a concern. Let's talk about medical data. We want to have a lot of medical data so that we can have more preventive medicine than curative. But then people are also worried, what if this data gets into the wrong hands? Look at account information, your banking details and banking data. So there are challenges that come up with new emerging technologies, and they will always be there. We cannot fear these challenges. We are here to solve the challenges. That's why any person attending the panel must be seated there as a problem solver. What solutions are we going to give? What's the solution to data privacy? One critical issue that I'm trying also to handle in my research is the efficiency of data analysis. Because when you look at graphs, and modern day data has been modeled like graphs, big data analytics, machine learning data, social networks, communication networks, there's a lot of resources required in terms of storage and analysis of this data. So more efficiency is going to be needed. Processes in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of memory resources to save this data. Because look at Facebook, billions of users. So you want to analyze this data. How much resource are you going to take to analyze this data? So those are some of the key areas that people could look at and try to think about when they're solving these problems. So data is going to be, it's a data intensive world. It's going to give us insights. It's going to make decision making better, and it's going to make us even see some of the insights that you could never have seen. As an organization, what can you do? Make sure your employees are upskilling and getting training on data analytics. Make sure you are ready to move, and you're ready to get these new systems. And I've seen many companies already doing that.
That was wonderful. That was wonderful. And maybe Dr. Mambo can also add on to that, especially in how this data is being used, how these data insights are being used in academia and research. Dr. Mambo, are you with us? Sorry, I just learned that Dr. Mambo dropped off, but I can maybe pose the same question to Mr. Latiff. How are we using this data in the area of academia and research?
Okay, so I think my experience is in manufacturing, and I think from a data standpoint, there it is. The manufacturing sector as a whole is looking at how do they start collecting that data continually, dynamically, and then trying to understand how not only how can they extract insights from that, but using AI and machine learning, being able to automate the responses of that data from those manufacturing processes. Because if we're looking at to become efficiently, you want to be able to minimize the amount of time from having a process output that is not meeting your parameters, and then to set a corrective set of actions. So that is where the industry is right now. And if we're looking from an opportunity standpoint for the engineers who are here and saying, where can I invest my time from an IoT standpoint? Manufacturing is where there's a huge gap, right? So if you can look at how can you create IoT devices that can be quickly used and integrated in the manufacturing sector, there's a whole industry there waiting for solutions. So to my challenge to the young engineers on this panel or on this conference is to invest your time in understanding how can you design IoT solutions specifically for manufacturing. You will have paying customers waiting for your products.
Thank you so much. Madam Felicity, do you have any comments?
Yes, I do. I think they've really touched on some very important aspects of data in terms of getting insights from data. And one thing I would like to really emphasize on from my experience with Internet of Things and AI is that before you even collect data, it's important to still, in the critical thinking space, to understand what type of data should I collect. And that's the biggest problem of the person who needs the data needs to, before even starting to collect it, knowing what data do I collect. So if you're building it for someone, a data pipeline for someone, or a device for collecting data, it's important to even understand the problem of what's the problem and what data would help us solve this kind of problem. So and also what I understand about data analytics and all that is that yeah, it's that definitely you not being intentional about what problem you're solving with the data, and you not knowing what to do with the data so as to get that insight can be a big critical factor. So even if you're trying to get business analytics or anything like that, it's important to know like what information do I need from my users, what information do I need from my clients. And I can tell you for sure, even with our sort of developer relations program, we are always analyzing, how many users are using our learning platforms, how many users are doing this and that, and it's all based on, these are the metrics we have, and from these metrics, this drives the kind of data that we extract from the users on our website. And of course, one last thing is that data is also very useful for measuring inputs versus outputs, especially for Internet of Things. In the agricultural space, we've also seen people are doing smart farming. It's not just about controlling the environment; it's also about how much water am I using versus how much produce am I getting in my farm. And of course, most people buy water, so they want to measure how much water they're using in their farm. So some of those things, like looking at every system, especially if you're doing it for business, as a system which is inputs versus outputs. And to build efficiency, you need to measure almost everything. And that's where data comes in. It's like, how much am I, putting in, and how much and compare it with what I'm getting out. And then also now sitting down and asking yourself, what does this mean, and what do I need to change? And of course, there's the aspect of being able to predict the future based on some of those insights over time.
Well, that was very insightful also. And maybe just to remind our audience, if you have any questions to our panelists, kindly drop it on the chat section, or you can as well raise your hand using the icon that we have there at the bottom bar. And to move to the next question, I would like us now to talk about healthcare and this fourth revolution technologies, because in most developing countries, access to healthcare is a major concern. And I'd just like to know from your experience, how are these different sectors using these technologies to bring access, healthcare access to everyone? And also, how are you going to make sure that this process is very safe for our patients and anyone who wants to use this system? For example, when we talk about remote monitoring, many companies are delving into this technology to make sure that you can monitor your patient from wherever you are. From your understanding, how are we using these different technologies to come up with these solutions in the healthcare industry? Mr. Martin, you can start us off on that.
Yeah, healthcare is one of those industries that, of course, if it were possible, we wouldn't wish to have it. That means we'd love everyone to be healthy, but we know that can only be a dream. Industry 4.0 has healthcare is one of the largest verticals in this revolution, and we have already seen trends, especially from the whole automation process, and we've just mentioned a few things like robotic surgeries, for example, where you have only one expert. Let's say we have only one expert in cardiothoracic or whatever cardiovascular surgery in Kenya, and then we need to have a surgery, an emergency surgery in another hospital. So we'd just have this doctor operate remotely from, let's say, Kenyatta, and carrying out this surgery in Kitale District Hospital. So those are aspects of for Industry 4.0 that are very very necessary. And you see, they demand very good infrastructure in terms of technological framework. They need very good 5G internet or very fast internet networks. So we also look at other factors in terms of remote delivery of drugs. So let's say in places where access is limited and you need to take their emergency medicine, let's say there were floods, for example, or there was a landslide in Baringo, you want to deliver medicine. Drones come in handy, unmanned air vehicles help in these medical deliveries. We have seen emergency of telemedicine with the COVID-19 pandemic, which is helping patients consult remotely to doctors. Wearable technologies are going to be a very important aspect of Industry 4.0. You have your wearable on the hand, preventive medicine. So it'll take your heartbeats, take your blood pressure, and tell you, hey, you need to walk more steps, you need to work out, you need to see a doctor, you're going to have a heart attack in the next 10 minutes. So these are things that will be advanced with Industry 4.0. What are the concerns? Still, data security, very important. We look at biomaterials, it's growing, like implants, prosthetics, which are some of the things that are coming up, and improvement of 3D printing and such things. Gene editing and ethics, those are some of the issues that are now very important to ask, and medical professionals can look at it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martin. And Mr. Latiff, anything to add on to that?
Yeah, so I'd like to put that in the context from the product development when it comes to medical devices, especially on Industry 4.0. So my takeaway here for the engineers is just understand that the development cycle for medical devices is much longer, more strenuous, and much more regulated, as if you're developing an IoT solution to measure, waterfall or rainfall in a farm. So just be ready for that step. However, the opportunities there are creating solutions again for our needs. So if you understand, for example, the team at KU, you created a ventilator. That's the first one to get through the whole KEBS process. When we're looking at that ventilator, we can look at it from the point of view of the medical aspect of the performance it needs to provide. But what else does it need from the Kenyan standpoint or from the African standpoint? So for example, from a power delivery, access to power, access to clean air, etc. So the opportunities for healthcare in Industry 4.0 are tremendous. The one thing that COVID has shown us all is that our gap in healthcare in the country and across Africa is huge. It is enormous. And when we look at the equipment for healthcare, a lot of these machines are extremely expensive, right? And they're expensive because maybe they have a huge set of features that perhaps we don't need locally. So there, the opportunity is there to be innovative in creating solutions. So again, when we did our research at Gearbox and looking at which areas for IoT are growing quickly, healthcare was one of the four. So there's a huge part of opportunity there that can be leveraged if teams are willing to spend their time in R&D. And I understand, yes, R&D requires some investment, but the opportunity is huge in healthcare. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Madam Felicity, in your introductory remarks, you mentioned about healthcare projects. And maybe in this context, are there any projects that you've come across or that you've done that are using these fourth industrial revolution technologies here in Kenya?
Yes, absolutely. So the project I worked for was in University of Nairobi. It's called the Mecha project, and I think there are still remnants of it, and there's still a task force on that. And definitely that was mainly for the maternal and newborn health units. Yeah.
Sorry, your voice is breaking. I think Madam Felicity has a problem with her network.
So these are used in the prototyping, especially aspect. You'll find a lot of 3D printing used in terms of building some of the parts. Can you hear me? I think some people are frozen on the screen. Yeah. So you'll find things like 3D printing being used, and you'd see a lot of use of some of the CNC technology, computer numerically controlled machines, in terms of, especially because when you're going to market with a health product, there's a lot of regulations, a lot of really things that you need to consider before even manufacturing the actual product. So in that process of figuring out what features to put, and even user testing it with the regulators and all that, there's a lot of fourth industrial revolution manufacturing processes used. Some of the other things I've interacted with. One of them is actually from Tanzania, and they're using AI for diagnostics. You know, a sort of like an AI doctor that you can give your symptoms, and then it gives you a sort of diagnostic. I mean, the diagnosis is not final. Of course, you may see like a doctor after, but you're able to kind of work through your symptoms and narrow it down. And it's still under development, and that's one of the interesting things. And of course, under that, there is a lot of talk about how do we regulate that, because then even the medical, anything medical is very regulated because it deals with human life, and you don't want somebody to go and get diagnosed by an AI bot and then say, the AI bot told me I have cancer and I went for chemo. So you don't want those kind of things. So there's a lot of regulation which needs to be done there. Then there's also touchless systems, especially during COVID right now. You're seeing them all around, those systems where as soon as your hand comes close, they'll dispense whether it's soap or kind of, what is it, sanitizer. So those are still incorporating sort of near field devices or some sort of sensor network, which is still Internet of Things, and that's very commonplace things that you've seen. And I'm trying to keep it. I'm keeping it. The things I've interacted with. Well, some of the things I know of are not, I haven't interacted with them. There's something that I've learned of called haptic technology, still related to robotic surgery, and it's sort of like being able to simulate the human skin for training. I think training surgeons, and those are some of those very high level high tech kind of things. There's also I don't know if this is fully implemented. There's medical records kind of being digitized, and that's a very, very big problem with some of these public health institutions, finding a better digital framework for not only onboarding patients or just keeping records about patients. They're still, some of them are still using books. Some of them tell you like, wait for your file, and you wait 30 minutes later, they're still doing paperwork. That's a transition that probably needs to happen, especially within Africa, because I'm sure there's other places where this has happened. Those are the ones that, oh yeah, the last one I forgot. There's also 3D printing for bone surgery and orthodontists. 3D printing of jaws, if somebody needs like a prosthetic for like a jaw, or they need to simulate surgery for bone surgery, they're able to 3D print and simulate that environment before going to the real surgery. So those are some of the things that are happening, and yeah, so most of them are happening within Nairobi.
Thank you so much for sharing with us all those technologies. As a biomedical engineering student, and that is my area, I really enjoy listening to such technologies and knowing that people are doing wonderful things outside there. And maybe I'll now read one question from the audience. Mr. Alan is asking, he's actually wondering if industry 5.0 was to come, in your opinions, what will it bring different than what we have right now? Or if you were to change something about the industry 4.0 technology, something that industry 4.0 technologies are offering, what would it be? I don't know if you got the question. Nice one. Mr. Latiff, you can respond to that first.
Yeah, so Industry 5.0. So I don't think it will be coming in a while, but if it were to come, and looking at what has happened with the progression of each of the phases in industry, what I would like to see in Industry 5.0 is what I'd probably say a vision of democratizing manufacturing. So making manufacturing accessible to anyone and everyone, right? So, and that's 3D printing is actually a really good example of this. If you are now able to 3D print a particular component that you need maybe for for your house. So maybe you want to you have a car part that is not working and you need to replace it, and you can 3D print that, or you need a house and you can 3D print that. Then what I would like the next phase of industry is to say whatever you need, you can find that particular thing, that design or that product, and be able to do it yourself through technology that is accessible to everyone. So that would be my ideal situation. Looking forward to Industry 5.0.
Nice one, nice one. How about you, Mr. Martin?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, Alan. I also think it's such a big jump. We are just getting into Industry 4.0, which we don't even know its potentials yet, because there's a lot of visions, dreams. People are trying to get a lot of insights. We are just trying to come up with applications that will actualize the dream of Industry 4.0. We've seen a change from the previous industrial revolutions, 1, 2, 3, which I think have served their purpose. And we looked at the time when we had like a lot of fossil fuel. Right now, we are trying to go to green or more like safe energy or cleaner energy resources. I think in Industry 5.0, for me, I would want it to be more people-centric. So it should be focused on the human beings. First of all, things like which we're already seeing in Industry 4.0, but as the trends that are visible right now, we are seeing still people becoming super rich. We want to see a revolution that will narrow this gap even further to have a more equal society, a society where every human being can live with a lot of dignity, respect for human life, and respect for human dignity. Yeah, but I think Industry 5.0, as Latiff has said, is not coming anytime soon, because we are just getting into Industry 4.0. In telecom networks, we'd already be thinking about it, because our lips are like 10 years. Like right now, guys are working in the labs on 6G and so on, and 5G is just getting in. So it's a good vision. I look forward to a more human-centric industrial revolution.
Awesome, Mr. Martin. That's very good. How about you, Madam Felicity?
Yeah, definitely. So of course, definitely, this is you wanting us to speculate on the future, and based on some, following some futurists online like Michio Kaku and the likes. There are some insights on some things that are possibly going to happen in the future in terms of industrial revolution, and of course, just like my fellow panelists mentioned, it will definitely be human beings working in conjunction with machines, and not machines taking over, definitely. So we're talking about like robotics will be at a point where we have like sort of robotic companions, just like we are seeing. We already have Alexa and the likes. There will probably be like that on a bigger scale. Maybe everyone will have their own robotic companion or assistant. We're already seeing people, like, for example, I was in a meeting the other day and somebody had a robotic assistant in the meeting which was taking notes. It's just a bot, that takes notes as you're in the meeting. And of course now, a bigger adoption, a more advanced adoption of that. And definitely I agree that people will definitely have to look into the ethical aspects and also the ecological aspects. So by ecological, I mean things like 3D printing. The conversation is still going on about what are the environmental effects of 3D printing, and how do we use materials that are safe for the environment, or how do we enable recycling, especially when you're using plastic. So maybe we move away from plastic, or have eco-friendly materials for 3D printing. There'll be more enhancement on biotechnology. And that's some of the research areas I'm observing, is that biotechnology is becoming very, very big. and part of some of the modules. There's some modules I'm taking from MIT, some of the Fab Lab community, and they're talking about things like how to grow things. So, for example, what if you're able to grow organs, or you can grow you can grow machines. Who knows? So there's research being done, material research being done on mycelium. Mycelium is the biological component of what is it called? Mushrooms. And they're able to grow blocks out of mushrooms, and those blocks can be used for building. And who knows that maybe we could get to a point where we can grow buildings rather than building them, and then they kind of merge with the environment, and they can decompose with the environment. Another thing I see growing is nanotechnology. Nanotechnology for MIT, there's a research going on nanobots, self-assembling robots. They're very tiny, and they can form different shapes, and they can form different things. And if you watch things like scientific fiction kind of settings, you're able to see that people are predicting that there'll be a time when you can have sort of nanobots that can change shape. So if you need a chair, they come and form a chair, and you sit on it. When you need it to become a television, it goes and forms a television. Who knows? At some point, you will have you don't have to buy furniture in your house. When you need a chair, you can summon a chair and and summon it using kind of those nanobots technology. There's also technology that is almost ready, where you can put medical devices in your bloodstream that run diagnostic within your bloodstream. So you swallow it as a pill, and it runs, and you don't have to do things like endoscopies, colonoscopies, things that are very invasive. Will be able to overcome things that are invasive, and have sort of wearable that are put within your biological system. Another thing we didn't mention is quantum computing. There's a lot of research being done around quantum computing, and I see it coming into the mainstream. And probably we will, forgo the normal computing systems into like quantum computers. And right now in MIT, they have very huge quantum computer, and who knows? That's how our computer started. And eventually they'll make it, portable and usable for everyone. And we'll have to revise our knowledge on computing, networking, programming, everything. Everything we know will become rubbish. We have to learn everything from scratch. Yeah, then there's also space exploration. We're already seeing SpaceX and the likes of Elon Musk doing a lot of stuff about space. And the conversations going on is about, can we go and extract minerals from asteroids? Can people go and live in space for a while? Can there be space tourism? Who knows? If you can dream it, it can happen. So I think those kind of things are going to be more accessible to the masses. So right now it's only billionaires who can do that. And that's how it starts. Eventually, people will be able to do trips to the moon, or to a certain asteroid of their choice, or just send, I don't know, messages to space. Yes, those are the ones that I could think of off the bat. But I'm pretty sure these are all possible, because there's things that are being researched and have kind of been implemented at a small scale. That's my take on that.
Excellent, excellent. Those were very good responses on the question. I hope, Alan, you are satisfied with the remarks and the answers. From my end, I wouldn't want to speculate about the future right now, maybe in other conversations. But okay, in the interest of time, I'll read the next question from the audience. This question comes from Mr. Ivan. Mr. Ivan is from the Uganda section, and he directed this question to Mr. Latiff. He's saying, Mr. Latiff said that students should focus on identifying the gaps between theory learned at school and the skill set required in the industry. What are some of these steps students should start? What are some of these steps students should take to get started on this path?
Great. Thank you for that question, Ivan. So really, you need to read and be a sponge for information. So read as much as you can about Industry 4.0. One, to understand what is happening out at the bleeding edge of technology. And then two, and most importantly, try to contextualize what that technology can do for you within your area. And the way to do this is really, you need to network and get in touch, visit industries, visit anytime there's a talk in your universities. I know that is a little bit different difficult now in the times of the pandemic. But in sessions such as these, that gives you the opportunity to learn what is there and what that gap is. Read and try to understand when you're listening to a program on the news and somebody's explaining a problem. Think about that problem critically and then try to apply what you're learning in solving that problem. Once you start doing that, you'll be able to understand where these gaps are and where what you learned in school and where that gap is as far as what skill you need to learn. And then pick up short courses. There are a lot of incredible short courses everywhere on the internet, from YouTube to Udemy to MIT to IEEE has an amazing library of courses that you have access to as a student at extremely subsidized costs. So use those skills to your advantage. And the way I actually look at education now is that education is continual. So the person who will be able to do short, specific courses and then apply those courses in the real world to get a solution is going to be the one who succeeds. That would be my suggestion to you. Thank you.
Thank you for that response. I hope, Ivan, you are satisfied with the answer. And we have another question from Mercy Chemtai. Mercy Chemtai says that she's a petroleum engineering student at Kenyatta University. And maybe I'll just read the question. Hey, I'm a student of petroleum engineering student. And for us, we are never really taught or involved in any industry 4.0, or at least from our classwork. Could you maybe mention some of the things you are doing for the oil and gas sector here in Kenya and your advice for any engineering students here in Kenya? I think I'll pose the question to Mr. Martin.
Thank you. I must admit, I'm no expert in petroleum engineering, but these fields cut across. And I think petroleum engineering at some point, people is a combination of mechanical engineers, civil engineers, and so on. But it's very important that students are able to understand that majorly what you're taught in class is, as Dr. Mambo has said, is first principles, the foundations. After that, it's upon you to find the extra skills, because again, everything cannot fit in the syllabus and stuff are changing on a daily basis. Sometimes universities review their syllabuses after 3 years, after 5 years. Before they do that review, the world would be in a totally different space. So going to class and learning about partial differential equations, learning about mechanical machines or turbines and so on, that is just what class is supposed to, that's what a professor can do to you. They only have like 45 lectures in a term to teach an entire unit of thermodynamics. So they might not get a lot of time to talk about industry 4.0, to talk about the current trends. Some professors would try and give it as assignments to students to look at emerging trends and so on. So as Latiff has just said from the previous question, the only way to know this is to read. Read like you're going mad. Just read a lot, because out of this reading, you discover that you don't know, because the more you read, the more you find out things, the more you learn. And in this century, they say if you're not, there's a simple way to describe illiteracy. If you cannot learn and relearn, then that's how they're describing illiteracy, because there's a lot of free resources online and students can really capitalize on this. We can capitalize on this. And there's so many things most of us here, including yourselves, have never had in school. But then we have to teach ourselves. You have to go online, go to the internet, attend such forums. Very important to identify the gaps and the skills you need in petroleum engineering. So for example, IoT and sensors will be a very, very great application for petroleum engineers, because there's a lot of operation on those mining wells, underground sensors, so that instead of sending human beings down there to check on equipment, you can just carry out remote diagnostics using sensors and do automatic repairs and make mines more secure and more safe. Treatment of waste products, because we know this is an area that is also having a lot of attack on with climate. But then we can still ensure the impact on the environment is less by treating of or finding ways of managing these byproducts of the whole mining process. So there's so many applications. IoT is just one of them. Artificial intelligence in decision making on the mining or on the markets. So there's a lot that you can explore. My advice, as you've already been advised by Latiff, is go read, just attend sessions. There are very many online webinars that are happening free of charge from IEEE, from other organizations, that you can be able to find insights. Join professional bodies. I joined IEEE as a third-year student in Multimedia University. Up to date, I still never regret joining it, because there you meet people in the industry. You'd probably, if you didn't attend this session, you'd probably have not met had not met some members of the panelists who are working on real problems in the society, who are working, Felicity working on IoT, Latiff looking at the manufacturing process, hardware implementation. You might never have come across these people. So attending these sessions, sacrificing your time, because trust me, as a student, I know right now, there are so many things, given that now you have lockdown in Kenya, and people would probably want to party a lot during the day because they can't do it at night. So you chose to attend these workshops. There's a lot of trade-off between some of the things that you want to do and the things you need to sacrifice in order to gain these skills. So all in all the information you're looking for is in that book or website or YouTube channel you've not watched. So just go in there and look for it.
Well, thank you for that. Madam Felicity, do you have anything to add on the same?
Yes, may I clarify? I'm adding on what students should do.
You're adding on application of these technologies in oil and gas, and generally how students should prepare themselves to acquire this knowledge that is not taught in class.
Okay, yes. So for oil and gas, I'd tell you for sure. We had been collaborating with some IoT developers, because our company works in conjunction with developers, and we work to enable the developers to build products, because what we offer is mostly APIs, which is more of middleware and infrastructure based. And I can connect this young engineer with these guys. They call themselves techpreneurs, and they have been working on a project about monitoring the levels of oil inside the tanks and inside the vehicles that are transporting the oil, and monitoring the logistics, like in terms of tracking the vehicles, where they are and how they're going, whether people are stealing or not, or whether there's leakage or not. That's a connection we can make. And to really touch on what my colleagues have talked about, what students should emphasize on. Definitely, personal initiative is needed, especially when it comes to things like building your soft skills. It's not something you're taught theoretically, it's something you need to practice. You need to be speaking with people, and the forums you can do that. For example, in the developer world, there's a lot of developer communities. Personally, that's how I got to know about all these technologies. I would learn through communities. I'd go and join a community in blockchain if I want to understand blockchain, because I'm not specializing in that, but I want to have a general overview. So I joined the community, I'd ask questions, I talk to people. So if you want to join IoT communities, they're there, they're online, they're offline, they're holding events, they're looking for student leaders, people who are in school who want to lead the initiative. Personally, as Africa's Talking, we're definitely looking for student leaders and ambassadors who can, educate other people about our products. We're able to educate them, and then they're able to, transfer the knowledge. Those are opportunities for you to build both your communication skills and leadership skills, and just being able to, coordinate affairs. And another thing is to build your design thinking capacity. There's still also forums for being able to, experimentally brainstorm on design thinking activities. There's a design thinking community within Nairobi that you can join. When it comes to also, there's also a community called Toastmasters. That one also builds both your leadership and your communication skills. IEEE is a great company, a great society, and I've seen a lot of people grow a lot of potential within that forum, and both technically, networks within Kenya, networks all over the world. Another thing that has not really been mentioned, I think, like, personal development is important for you as a person, from when you're a student to when you're a professional, where you need to also understand other aspects of life, and because you as a person are going to affect the results of your, what is it, of whatever you're doing. So do a bit of personal development. Work on your things like emotional intelligence, because in our company we have a program for mental health, and that's a big problem in the youth. We have a program for mental health, in that we have professionals who are paid by the company who you can talk to in case you're going through stuff. But life in general can be stressful. It doesn't matter whether it's your work or whether it's family or anything. You always need to deal with that so that you can be a better professional. So really work on your mental health on a personal level, and still, if you need to be able to sort things out early enough so that you are whole enough to deal with professional life. So I'd say those are the in-betweens that you can still work on now, even as you're transitioning to a professional.
Thank you so much. Maybe you can also hear from Mr. Latiff, if you have any contribution to that.
So when you're, let me ask that question in this way. When you're looking at how do you apply Industry 4.0 technologies in the sector that you're studying in, really just follow what the basic pillars of Industry 4.0 and what that means, right? It means connecting the digital world to the physical world. So if you're in the petroleum sector, how do you want to control the process of refining petroleum, and what are the challenges in that process? So maybe you're trying to monitor how much, what are the different types of petroleum that you're getting from crude oil all the way to paraffin, and you're trying to monitor that. So how do you use Industry 4.0 to do that? That means you need sensors, you need flow sensors, you need to collect that data, and you need to analyze that data. And when you've got that data, what are you going to do with the insights? Are you going to use those insights to then create some automation to make certain things happen? So look at it from a problem standpoint, and then try to understand from that problem where you're going to apply Industry 4.0 methodologies. That, I think, is the approach to take. And when you're looking at the problem, you'll very quickly understand where your gap is from a learning standpoint. Then you can try to go, as Felicity said, go seek that knowledge. And as also Martin said, go seek that knowledge, which will then open up your eyes onto what is possible. And then you can start trying to build solutions, try to build a prototype solution. I cannot understate how important it is for you to build something. That experience of building is really what going to set you apart to your peers when you're interviewing for jobs or when you start your own startup. Experience in building is critical. So do not shy away from creating and building, because we all learn by experiences. I mean, you've heard about the 10,000 hour rule. Start doing your 10,000 hours now. Start building. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mercy Chemtai. I hope those responses have answered your questions. Mercy, you can see you're trying to talk.
Yes, thank you very much for the response. It has been really insightful. Now I know what I need to do to be on the right track. Asante sana.
Okay, that was good. That was good. I can see we don't have any other questions from the public, or rather from our audience.
Excuse me, Kristen. There's one last one I think you skipped, which looks like a very short but critical question. Automation is awesome, but just a thought. Isn't it making us lazy? Just a quick one. Sorry for cutting you short. I think the whole concept of technology is to make our life easier. So I don't know about what everyone else thinks, but for me, I would be happy to wake up in the morning and go for a short run, then just come back and open my laptop, sit in that driverless car and continue preparing or working as I go to work or go to any other place I'm headed to, so that I don't have to keep minding about, is there another car coming ahead? Do I need to stop? Are the traffic lights changing to red? I don't think that's being lazy. That's just building technology to help our life become easier, more efficient, so that we spend more time attending music concerts than going to the farm to plow. Unless you're really a believer in doing a lot of manual work, then yeah, for me, it doesn't. The less the work we do, the better for me. I'm happy to just sit and enjoy time going to music studio arenas or watching movies and just sitting and working and doing exercise. Yeah, but also as a builder, I think for engineers, we are not getting lazy at any point, because we are the ones who are supposed to make everyone's life easy. So we are probably going to be working and building these driverless cars as everyone sits in them, the finance guys, as they go to the banks. Yeah. So I feel like that question can be used in terms of it's a serious concern, especially in terms of health, but it can be used as part of a good way to end this conversation. I don't know what the others think about that. Are we being lazy?
I agree with you, Alan. It's not Alan, sorry. I agree because there's a quote I heard from an entrepreneur saying that if working hard was was equivalent to your output as an individual, then construction workers would be the highest paid individuals in the world. And you can see how value is communicated through how people are compensated even in the industry. Is that manual labor, highly manual labor, is very physically taxing, but is low return. So you want to work smart as an engineer. You want to work smart. You want to get value for time, value for money, and part of that is like the things that are low value tasks. You can delegate that to a machine and focus on the things that are high value and are are worth your mental space and your emotion, whatever space you want to give it. And yeah, so it's not definitely making us lazy. I look at technology as an assistive tool, just like any tool. I'm sure the time when they moved from using rocks to using djembes, people complained. They were like, we prefer our rocks, but it's still change. People resist change, but when the change comes, they realize our quality of life has improved. So yeah, our quality of life is definitely going to.
Sorry, Felicity, you are muted.
Yes, sorry, I didn't realize. Yes, we'll be more efficient and we'll be able to do things, faster. Yeah, and definitely you don't want to be doing a lot of manual labor. Just like I told you, thanks to Industry 4.0, we're able to telecommute such that you can work for somebody who's in the US in Kenya. Would you have been able to do that if we had not made our leapfrogs in terms of technology? So we have to look at kind of the positives and look at how to find that transition and how to still define our humanity, because there's a way we have been modeled due to the previous ways. We've been modeled to value what is it, like hard labor. And that's a thing, I think it's also a thing in Nairobi. It's like you have to be working hard, you have to be, you know, getting in a matatu and, you know, breaking a sweat for you to feel like you're working hard. But the truth is that most of the hard work is you thinking in your brain, you being able to conceptualize ideas, you being able to ideate and creatively think. That is where the real value is, and that's where most of the work is. Otherwise, if somebody didn't think through and architect most of the things around you, it wouldn't have happened. So when you're focused so much on implementation and forget that we need to reel back, delegate some of this, tasks that are repetitive and more, more high level, and focus on the fundamentals, focus on innovating, focus on building, focus on ideating. That's what I'd say. So that's not laziness. That's, us being more creative humans.
Mr. Latiff, your comment?
I think I couldn't add anything else that Martin and Felicity haven't said, so I'm okay with that. I'm just curious on time because there's a question here that I really don't want us to miss. So hopefully we'll get to answer all the questions on this session. So back to you. Thank you.
Maybe Mr. Latiff, you could just point out the question because we're planning to end the session.
Great. So I think it's question 10. So maybe you can just read over that, and then I'll provide my answer. And then also we've touched on it a little bit, but I think we need to go a little bit more in depth on that.
Nice. So question 10 says, Industry 4.0 brought in interconnection of devices. Do you think we should be worried about computer takeover of the world? If computers become more faster than us, is there a risk of them not listening anymore to the master?
Great, thank you. And then there's also the question before it is also relates as well, and that talks about in what aspects is Industry 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 better than Industry 4.0 technology? So my answer to this is in each of the preceding phases of the industries of the transitions that we've gone, human life has actually gotten better. And both Martin and Felicity have mentioned this. We as a society have gotten better. If we look at the quality of life in general, we are living much better today than we were 100 years ago, than we were 500 years ago. So definitely we're doing better. So the only challenge that we're facing with Industry 4.0 or with each of the increasing industries is that with each phase, the scale of that industry is much larger. So not only do we get much better benefits across the world, the ills of that transition is also bigger. So when we talk about Industry 4.0, the one that is really creating the most stress for us on a global scale is the environmental space. What is happening with pollution? We can all see from a climate standpoint that our climate is changing, right? So how do we look at Industry 4.0 and mitigate those things from happening? So that is something that is very critical that we have to think about. And then last but not least, when we're talking about AI and understanding AI is all about what is pre-programmed and then the machine will learn. The one issue that I see, especially if we don't do anything with it from the continent standpoint, is AI currently is written outside of Africa. So it has biases that doesn't meet what we are doing. So if you have visual recognition software, when it looks at us from Africa, that software is not working correctly. So those are the things that we need to think about, when, especially as we go into Industry 4.0 and think about Industry 4.0 from our standpoint. What is Industry 4.0 going to do for us here on the continent to be able to give us best fit solutions to the problems that we're facing? So I really would like Felicity and Martin to give their views on that, because it's really important. If we don't set those parameters to say from Africa, this is how we think Industry 4.0 will look for us, then we will be using Industry 4.0 based on the parameters of other people looking in. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree, Latif. Yes, that's definitely something that we need to understand here within Africa, is that we should not experience technology from a user perspective. We need to get to a point where we are also creators. We're also participating in research. We're also, writing those papers, being curious about the technology and adding something to it, not just using it. Like, we don't just take 3D printing as it is, bring it to Kenya and say, oh, I'm so smart because I can 3D print X, Y, Z. How about you look at the technology critically and say, yeah, I see this gap in 3D printing, and I would like to research on how we can improve that. Whether it's biosafety, you can say, I think this material can work. Right now, there's research about how to use starch, just a normal starch, as a 3D printing medium, and it's working. And we need some of these focus groups who just say, I'm going to take this and I'm running with it. I'm taking this and I'm running with it. And you're documenting and you're ensuring that the world can see that there's creativity happening from Africa. And we are not just people who, kind of just take technology, because just if you understand economics, is that if we are to derive the economic value of Industry 4.0, we need to be producing something, not consuming. So we need to get up to a point where we can not only build our own products, we can also build our own machinery, because even that machinery aspect is also a place where value is being extracted from Africa to Asia or whatever country, because even when we want to set our industry, we have to bring machines from outside. So we need to get to that point where we challenge ourselves as engineers and say, how creative can we be? Instead of buying ABCD, start from a small thing. Say, instead of buying a smartwatch, can I design a smartwatch? Believe me, it's possible. People have designed iPads, people have designed mobile phones. Challenge yourself and build something, especially now that you're in school. You have the support system, and you guys have it better right now. You have all this ecosystem. You have people like Gearbox who have like a lab with tools. Some of us had to deal with those labs within university, which have one microcontroller, and you only look at it and they tell you, this is what it looks like, this is what it looks like, and then they put it back in the shelf. So it's just like, you don't even understand it on an experiential level. And right now you have all these things. You can access mentors within the ecosystem. Some of the people who have built stuff, like for example, the hardware board we've built was built by one of our team members, and he's very good at building products from scratch, designing electronic products. And those are people who are already within the ecosystem, and we can still build those pipelines between mentors and students, and we create all this technologically savvy from a practical building from an idea kind of perspective, not being people who are going out there and going like, oh wow, so this machine was built, you understand how it was built, and you just maintain the status quo as is. A revolution is going to happen when we decide we are disrupting the status quo. We are not going to be consumers anymore. We are going to be those people who are like Martin Luther. We have a dream. And what is your dream as an engineer? Is your dream to go to an industry and just be given a paycheck? Or is it for you to instigate and spark change in what is happening? And we need to give Africa a voice. And you have the capacity to do that. You have the intellectual capacity. You have everything it takes. And you even have the support right now. So I'm challenging the engineers to pick a project, build it, document it, get a mentor, get out there, be as loud as you can be, because right now you can be so, visible digitally. Do not be the person who's trying to do things in the dark. It doesn't work anymore in this era. Make sure your stuff is online. It's on LinkedIn, it's on GitHub, it's on whichever place you need to be. You cannot do things in silence. It's time to give Africa a voice.
Thank you very much, Felicity and Latiff. Yeah, given that my name is Martin, I also have a dream. I think I want to agree with Latiff's first point on African made innovations. And I'll use an example that is not tech related of my own situation. So one day I went to hospital just a few weeks ago, and they looked at my kidney. So after it was consulting, so I had to get the results later, and the doctor wrote to me a message and said that you need to come back to hospital. We think you have a problem. When I went to hospital, it was another doctor on shift who looked at the keratin levels, and she was like, oh, there was no need for alarm. These levels are high because you're black, and a black person, you have like a bigger body, a bit masculine, so it's normal to have these levels of keratin. Yeah, so those are things that can be seen in medical fields. We've some doctors have never even been probably seen a black skin, so they wouldn't even know how a rash looks on a black skin. That same with technology application in Africa. When you're talking about traffic decongestion, the situation in London might be so different to the situation in Nairobi. Look at so I would even start by just the discipline of public service vehicles here and the discipline of public service vehicle in Ongata Rongai. So when you're designing a system or an artificial intelligence system, it must be trained on that type of data, because you want to train it with Nganya in mind compared to a system that works here in London, which might be probably so nice but doesn't do the same. Are we worried that AI is going to take over? Yes, that's a very justifiable worry that people need to have. But then there are controls. That's why we have ethics in AI as a very active area of research. Universities, like, so these are areas that are being funded very well. All over the world, people are talking about ethics, because AI, if it gets to the wrong hands, can be disastrous. Just the same way bomb manufacturing is manufactured by countries for their defense, but we know terrorists get the bombs and use it to harm others. So we must ensure that our scope of operation is within AI. In as much as we want to democratize internet, we want liberty and freedoms in terms of technology development, but then still we need ethics that govern these processes. Because look at, I know most of you in IEEE have done the IBM AI analyst course, and one of the stages of AI is artificial superintelligence, the self-programmability, where AI is able to learn, program, and design the systems on its own. These are predictions of beyond 2060 and so. So at this point, if we don't have ethics in AI and AI designs, then we might encounter this. But again, these are challenges that makes us what we are. Without the challenges, we'd probably still be in Industry 1.0, or would probably be in Mesopotamia trying to deal with the agrarian revolution. So the challenges are good for us. There's that worry, and that worry probably is what makes us as innovators think, come up with solutions, develop new methods, researchers to research on AI ethics and come up with policies that will be good for this environment. We are looking at blockchain and protecting systems. So all these challenges come in as an opportunity for us. And then lastly, there was a question on that sheet about the question sheet about Industry 1, 2, and 3. Are they better than Industry 4.0? I wouldn't say yes, but then I would say they've served their purpose. They've driven the world to where we are today. It's time to move on. Like, look at when we have been driven by fossil fuel. Now we are thinking clean energy and so on. So I think they've done their work. They've done their purpose. That revolution was good. We now need to focus on what we are going to do for the future, for clean energy, for a more human-centric technology first, more user experience in mind during all in the design process. So those are some of the things. And in mind, anytime as a young innovator, you're trying to work on these projects, you must always include a good risk analysis in the process, from your planning to the end of those processes. But I think I would end there and say that artificial intelligence brings more benefit than the bad and the negative, which in any technological revolution or evolution we've had, there have been positives and negatives. So the positives outweigh the negatives. AI ethics will help us control this environment and bring about ethics in designs.
That's very, very wonderful. And for me, I think this discussion has been educative, amazing, and eye-opening. And I know most of the audience can also agree with me on that. We have various comments from the audience. People are saying they love it, very true, and we have so many reactions. And even as we conclude this session, I'd like to thank all our panelists for being with us here today and sharing with us your knowledge, your expertise, and also preparing us for what we are going to encounter in the industry, because most of us here are students and also our mentors, and even our mentors in this call will also get insights of what they can mentor other students who didn't manage to join this call. So thank you so much. I'll give you now a chance to tell us your closing remarks, and as you share with us your closing remarks. Maybe I could just pose a question that I would like to hear about. I would like to hear your opinions about. And the question is, so are we really ready for Industry 4.0 in this nation? In Kenya, are we really ready? Looking at the country at a diverse level, are we ready for this? We can start with closing remarks from Mr. Latiff, then we'll go to the next.
Are we ready? You know, there's that saying, the famous saying is the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now. So we need to be ready now. And the reason for that is from an economic standpoint, if we don't do it, somebody else will, and the economy of the country will not move forward. We will not prosper. So we have to do it. You know, we have to do it from a personal level. We have to do it from a sector level. We have to do it from a country level. We have to do it from a continent level. So we have to do it. We are ready because we're talking about it now. It's just a matter of implementing and learning and doing that iteration cycle. My closing remark to this panel is what I hope comes from this is that we're seeing the beginning of something new, a sector that is really going to drive the economy of this country. When we're looking 10 years from now, we can say the genesis of this was around 10 years ago, right? And to do that, we actually need to make an ecosystem, and an ecosystem where students are in touch with the industry, who are in touch with researchers, who are in touch with innovators, and create a system that allows innovation and ideas to flow freely, to move forward with the shortest amount of time possible. And hopefully this ecosystem can become formalized, and we can then lobby the government to change or implement the policies that will help the industry move forward. So that is one of the action points I'm hoping that we will drive coming out of this. If you want to reach me, I'm at Gearbox. You can find us at gearbox.co.ke, and we can help you across the spectrum from idea to getting your product out to market. If you want to reach out to me for any question about your career and maybe learn about what I've done and the things that I've learned, I'm willing to help. You can either email me, you can find me on LinkedIn. Let's connect and let's change this country. Let's move forward. And I'm excited. In my entire career, I don't think I've ever been as excited to be doing what I'm doing now at home. So it's truly an honor. Thank you for having me on this panel.
Thank you so much for that, Madam Felicity.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I absolutely agree with Latiff. We definitely are ready psychologically, because we're talking about it. There are things that need to be set in place. There's a support system to be created. So basically what we are saying is mostly like a call to action. Is like just like some of the things that I pointed out. There's a need for people to step in the space of, taking leadership around technology advocacy. Pick your battle. Decide, I'm going to I'm going to create a community around additive manufacturing. I'll have a community around Internet of Things. I'll have a community. Yeah, let's have as many of those as possible because there's a way people grow through what we call peer-to-peer learning. That's one of the experiences I've had dealing with communities, that you learn faster with not only mentors, and you also learn faster when you're learning as a community, because there's some shortcuts you learn from each other that you don't have to go through endless documentation to learn. We're also saying that there needs to be more cohesiveness. If somebody is willing to step into that gap and say that, for me, I want to be what we call like ecosystem builders. There's people who are considered ecosystem builders, that I'm going to take initiative and be the person who bridges the gap between the people in government to technology. And I can see, like, from Gearbox, Kamau Gashigi has been doing a lot of that, connecting the government and letting them understand that, you need to invest in this area. And it's not been easy. It's been years of talking to those guys, and they still want to put computer centers. And it's like, people are building, advanced technology, and you're still putting computers in classrooms. That should be very fundamental. There needs to be a lot of people involved. And just like I said from the beginning, is that when we talk about a revolution, I think Martin Luther King, that's why I was saying I have a dream. I think a movement, I think masses of people moving towards the same direction. It's not a one people affair. It's going to be masses of people, thousands upon thousands, if possible, millions of people who are just taking up the initiative and saying, we have had enough of staying behind. We have had enough of, consuming goods from China or from America. We've had enough of this, and it's about time for Africa to step in. It's about time for Kenya to take the stage in the global ecosystem and be heard. And that's going to start with just one person who has a dream, and slowly it trickles in. You become contagious. So we're asking you, if you're here, my call to action is, be contagious in your place. Be contagious. Be so excited about either a particular technology, or like me, I'm excited about technology in general. So be so excited that you're contagious, that when you go and talk about something, you pass it on. It becomes like coronavirus. When you meet somebody, that person becomes a tech ambassador, and they go learn and they build something. So much as some of us are trying to do as much as we can in the space that we're in the spaces that we've been before, there needs to be more people for it to be a revolution, for it to be to scale up and be huge. Yeah. So what else? Closing remarks. Yeah. So another way for us to work together, I would love to work together definitely with the different student communities, different individuals who want to grow, and be able to leverage on the things that I know, the networks that I have. I think I'll leave my email within the chat box, and we can continue this conversation. And for me, it's really seeing as many people coming into this. If you can talk to 10 people, each person who is here, and get them building, get them building other people, not just building themselves. As you're building yourself, build other people. Engage in STEM programs, engage in within your university, build a program, share knowledge. I don't know, build a YouTube channel, do something. Like, let us not just come to IEEE festival and talk about things and then go and sit on them. Let us see action happen from here. So I'll leave my contact for anyone who wants to continue this conversation later, for anyone who wants some sort of mentorship to keep the motion going. With the only way for us to catch up is not to have just 5 individuals who understand and are implementing, is to have the masses. We're talking China style. In China, you can make a phone in a day. In Kenya, if you want to make a phone, it will take you what, a year? So yeah, so just like jumping into action and doing it. And you're never too young, it's never too early. That's my addition.
Wow, thank you so much. That was awesome. Let's now hear from Mr. Martin.
Yeah, this has been a very interesting panel and a very nice discussion. I'll just start with a simple joke I saw recently on social media. And this is related to the question about, are we becoming lazy? So there was this simple meme. I think meme is probably the most modern way of communicating in our society, that was saying, tafuta pesa, uache kutumia weekend kuosha nguo. So like it was a very funny way of showing the essence of working hard to avoid excuses to making life even harder. Now, are we ready for Industry 4.0? My answer to this is a very strong yes. I know we are at a very we are not very close, or we compared to very developed countries, but I think we are. And why do I say yes? Number one, we have already started setting infrastructure. When you look at Communication Authority, they have done allocation of spectrum for 5G and 5G tests. We are seeing companies like Safaricom have started testing new networks, which we have already talked about. IoT, companies are already investing in IoT, and Liquid Telecom is one of the leaders in this area, doing it in an enterprise, giving it as an enterprise service. So we have the infrastructure to some extent, and we have the skills. Such congress or such festival is a good example that yes, as a country, this is the discussion we are having, and we are ready to take up these roles. We are seeing a lot of innovations around Industry 4.0 related areas and services, and a very good example is KU itself, which has been leading many universities, and I think it's also because they're getting very good support from their Faculty of Engineering, thanks to Dr. Mambo. So as a country, we are ready. We just need to sharpen a few things, especially on policy framework, incentives to local companies and industries, because we don't want to have semiconductor being taxed. If we got in semiconductor devices tax free, then would spur a very fast development speed in the country. So we need to have, like as my colleagues have said, a link between government, academia, industry, and have a conversation to come up with better policies that will spur. We need to have specific interest and focus on this Industry 4.0 as a government in general, and as individuals in our schools. Just to close, in my closing remarks, I'll just go to look at Nadella from Microsoft, who talks about so digital technologies need to have the ability to change outcomes and truly empower people all over the world, creating a more equitable growth. So the key for me is this equitable growth. We need to have equality, and that's where we are seeing economic models need to change from current models to more circular economy models where everybody is a beneficiary. So we must look at this with these disruptions in technology. We must be careful not to create a bigger divide. We must be create technology that doesn't leave anyone behind. So, and how do we ensure we don't leave anyone behind? Education is a very important thing. In our society, we need education. A good thing is like access, a simple thing such as access. And that's why when Communication Authorities is looking at universal access, that's a very important thing, because education for everyone, every child, and having access, internet access, to the lowest levels of, to the most interior levels of the country is very important. And we hope that with all this, we shall see the opportunities and benefits of this industry. And I look forward to interacting with you more. Reach out to me. I'm happy to talk with everyone, to share, to discuss ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Martin, for that. And allow me to read one of the comments from the chat section from Mr. Gerard. He's from Tanzania. Mr. Gerard says, thank you for the very wonderful session. We need more of these forums, great events. And he was seconded by Martin Gulat, or rather Martin Chemchai. I agree with you, Gerard. We definitely need more of this. Thank you so much. For me, from my end, it's been an honor to moderate this session. Early in the morning, we had a session about leadership, coaching, and volunteering. To all the students in this hall, I'll urge you to continue volunteering. Personally, I'm a volunteer and I keep on learning from one experience to the next. So start volunteering and start learning these new technologies, just as we have been advised by our panelists. So thank you so much, and I'd like to hand over to the chairman of IEEE Kenyatta University Student Branch, Mr. Alan Koech. Over to you, Alan.